neon signs were calling your name, they're calling your name. Find me in the corner, have the time of my life. You think you wanna do the same? Do you wanna do the same thing later? Watching them see it. The enemy shining down on you and I hold you till the morning light. Everybody singing with the up all night, sleep all day. Up all night, sleep all day. That's right. Up all night, sleep all day. Come on, up all night. Maybe we can just stay up 24 hours a day. Come on now, lift those hands in the air.
Blas, I want to congratulate you with your success with Slaughter. And first, why don't we get started with your equipment?
All right, I'm playing pretty much a standard, would be a double bass rock kit. Bass drums are 24 inches by 18 inches deep. Rack toms, 13 inches, 14 inches. The floor toms are 16 and 18. I'm not really sure the depth because I play mine a little bit differently. I play mine cut square. It's 13 by 13, 14 by 14. And these are a bit tall for me now, but I'm dealing. And I guess a snare drum, it's a brass, Ludwig brass snare. I usually play a hammered brass. This is the regular brass, but it's pretty similar. 6.5 inches deep. I always use 6.5 inches deep. And that's about it for my drums. I normally have some concert toms here, but couldn't get them here today.
I got you, okay. Why don't we talk about cymbals? What are you currently using here?
Let's see, cymbals. Hi-hat, the most important cymbals, I guess. I'm using Fusion, AA Fusion hi-hats on the top with a leopard hi-hat on the bottom with little vent holes in them. And the vent holes help to take away that locking sound, the pocket of air sound that you get when you have two closed cymbals there. You know, it helps the sound breathe a little bit more. The cymbals, on my side cymbals, two 18-inch medium thin AA crashes, and the fronts, 19 inches medium thin AA crash, Sabians, all Sabians, one 22-inch Sabian China type, and one 20-inch Sabian China type on the side. My ride is a 22-inch Sabian AA rock ride, pretty thick, with a big bell, because I use a bell a lot in my playing, so it has to have a thick bell. And all my cymbals, my hi-hats I set up pretty high, because in the playing I do, I need a lot of room for my left hand when I'm playing the snare drum, so I set it up pretty high. It gives me a lot of room so that I'm not hitting my knuckles a lot.
Right.
And all my crashes are set pretty high. It's really set for, for visual playing, so that when I hit a cymbal, if somebody's in the back of an arena or on the balcony of an arena, they can see, when I raise my arm to hit a cymbal, they can actually see that, because people pay to see a show, they're not just paying to listen to it. Or they can just buy a CD and throw it in their truck, So I got everything set up pretty high. My China types are set so I can use a motion where I'm, coming around the back of my head, and actually so it's set exactly where my arm ends up. And all of them are set up. My crashes are all perfectly level. I normally have them hung from my cage, and for me it works because if the cymbal's level, it's the weight's distributed evenly underneath the bell, and it resonates longer. So I use that technique, setting them up level. And that's about it for my cymbal setup. My ride cymbal is set right between my floor tom and my second rack tom for easy access.
Keep it real low.
Yeah, pretty low and flat. As flat as I can get, without hampering my playing at all. Because, like I said, the same thing with the ride cymbal. I like a good bell sound, and by keeping it flat, it lets it ring out a lot longer.
Very good. You were mentioning about as far as posture goes, and I noticed that your kit, it sets up real high. So basically, you were talking to me prior to this about your posture and so on.
When I started doing this, I'd spoken to a lot of drummers who had always had back problems when they played like a lot of nights in a row, and being that we're touring, I started playing with rock bands and touring, like almost every day of the week, 6-7 nights a week. and I wanted to alleviate that problem. So I put my stool a bit lower, and my snare drum I made it completely flat, and my toms are relatively flat compared to most people. It's not really, what you're taught as a drummer initially is to have everything as close as possible, so there's as little motion as possible. But for me, I wanted it, it kind of forces me to sit up straight, and it helps with, my posture, and it helps with the visual aspect. I'm a little bit higher, so people can see me over the top of the drums, and I like things further apart because, like I said, I like to put on a bit of a show. You don't want to be just left in the background when you have, your guitar player and your singer running all around the stage, jumping around, doing flips, and the drummer's just kind of back there in the background. And you can't really see him moving if he's just playing like this. You can't really see him moving from the back, so I like to have everything, far apart, so you have to have big motions to hit things,
And your posture straight up.
Yeah,
and sitting right up. Okay.
And it keeps your energy level up. I also, because I sit this way, I'm very balanced on my stool. I don't sit all the way back. I'm right in the middle, and even if my feet are raised, I'm still balanced. That way, it's helpful for your bass drum playing, because a lot of times you're playing hi-hat and you want to move over to the pedals really quickly for a double bass fill. And if you're like leaning back, you're going to lose your balance when you move your foot away from the hi-hat, because you're like leaning, on your hi-hat pedal. So I make sure I'm very balanced on my stool, and the posture helps me do that, so I can maneuver quickly to my double bass and back.
Okay, Blas, why don't we talk about warm-up exercises here? And I know that you had mentioned that you do some stretching exercises before you go on.
Yeah, one stretching exercise that I've learned when I was in the drum corps to get your forearm muscles stretched out is using your drumsticks. Hold your palms facing up, grab the sticks, and one hand at a time, bring it inside and around, extending your arms as far as you can, and then raise it above your head, and then as far down as you can go, and that'll stretch your forearms out just a little bit before you start your actual warm-up exercises. And for my feet, which also do quite a bit of work during the show, I do normally the kind of stretches that a runner would use for your calves, and that way, I do things like I stand on the edge of a stairway or some kind of ledge with my heel hanging over the edge, so I can get in the overextended position to stretch out my calf muscles. And for my legs, for stretching the hamstrings, I do normally what the kind of stretches a jogger or runner would do before running, because there is a lot of running motion to playing bass drums and hi-hats, so I use that a lot. And for my arms, because of the large motions I do, I need to stretch out my entire arm and chest, so I do a windmill type of motion, holding both drumsticks, similar to the move Pete Townsend does when he's playing his guitar. It's just a windmill around and done very rapidly, and then switching hands and doing the same motion. And to get prepared for the hits I do on my China type cymbals, which are very high, and my front crashes, I do a few stretching exercises. I bring my arm around my head a few times just to stretch out the muscles I'll use for that, and it helps to prevent pulling a muscle or something, which could happen because I do play very physically and attack things very hard, and wouldn't want to run into any of those kind of problems on stage.
Yeah, for endurance, what do you do actually to keep your endurance? Because you are such a physical drummer.
A lot of running, aerobic activities. Bicycling is my favorite because it's no impact on your muscles, because your knees do get beat on quite a bit playing bass drums, and hi-hats all the time. So I try to ride my bike a lot, and running if there's not a bike available, or if not a facility to do that, because you definitely need to have some endurance built up in your cardiovascular system, because all the energy that you're wanting to build up towards the end of the set, the finale, that's where it really counts, and you have to have that storehouse of energy for that point in the show. And if you don't, you normally end up dragging your tempos there, and you lose that the highlight there. So definitely for the dynamics of the show, you definitely have to have enough energy to last you through the end, to to where it's like full on at the end of the show. For the encore.
Before we get totally into the warm-up exercises, why don't you show your stick grip and your technique that you utilize?
My stick grip, I learned both ways. I learned the traditional grip and the match grip. I play the match grip because when you hold your sticks a different way, as say one with the traditional grip and one with the match type grip, you get a different sound out of your drum, and that's why I use both match grip. And I have the top of my hand facing straight up because it's the most practical motion of your wrist. You know, if you're using the side technique, for me, you have your arm doing kind of a twist there, and it's really not, I guess it's wasting time or wasting energy or something, but the most practical motion for me is the wrist straight up and down. And I always, you know, when I was learning, I always made sure I did that exercise very carefully. I made sure I was always using my wrist, because even though I look like I'm playing with my arms, the actual hit on the drums or on the cymbals is a snap of the wrist, because if you're doing these large motions coming down hard on your cymbals, you're gonna lay into it without any rebound, and it's gonna kill the sound of the cymbal of the drum. Whereas if you're using your wrist, you can snap it back off and pull the sound out of the cymbal of the drum. So I always, you know, use the wrist, even though I'm using the big motion to get there. When I actually hit the instrument, it is the wrist motion.
Okay, let's move on to warm-up exercises. Maybe you could demonstrate some warm-up exercises that you do before the show.
All right. Mainly what I do is it's a lot of different sticking patterns played normally with 16th notes, and alternating between the left hand and the right hand. I'll start out playing with the right left right left right left pattern, and alternate to a left-handed leading pattern, and something like this. In order to turn that pattern around, at the end of a section of those, I'll play a double stroke on my right hand so I can switch to the left hand lead. And I'll overemphasize the accent so you can see where I'm switching.
Now, other ones that you do besides that, I'm sure?
Just different sticking patterns. I do what's called a paradiddle, if you're not familiar with that. So the pattern is right, left, right, left, left. And that's a pretty good technique for keeping your hands evenly, you know, balanced as far as how much you're using them. And that's, it's like. I think the key, you know, to all your warm-up exercises is to keep it very even, and triplets are very good at doing that. And one of the other patterns I use is a series of triplet 16th notes combined with half of a paradiddle figure, which would be right left in triplet 16th note form, combined with right left right. And that ends up with having your left hand lead the next pattern, which starts with the same triplet 16th pattern, left, right, and then ending with the other half of the paradiddle, which is left, right, left. So it kind of sounds like this. The triplet exercise, always keep things very even. Something else that gets me warmed up really well is double strokes. And double strokes always don't have to mean that you're bouncing the note. And whenever I play double strokes in a roll, to prevent it from sounding uneven, always accenting on the right hand where you get this effect. It's they first start learning rolls, start, you know, emphasizing the right hand too much. So what I do is I emphasize the triplet accent pattern using the double stroke. So if you're playing, the accent pattern would be triplet accent pattern, and then you just double every note. So it's I work on my rolls to keep them even also without bouncing it too much, because if you start letting the stick do the work for you and bouncing too much, you're not getting the proper exercise of that exercise. So I accent the second note of the double. So instead of it's of course, you also would do that in the triplet accent form, which would keep your left hand, up to the same pace as your right hand. But that helps to stop the over bouncing, which a lot of people do when they first learn a roll, so it sounds really sloppy. It helps you, have more control over your double strokes.
Mm-hmm. All right. To conclude on the warm-ups, is there anything you'd like to add, Blas?
Yeah, I don't want to get too technical with exactly what exercises I do, because what I do may not work for you or for anybody else. The point of warming up isn't really, a demonstration of technique. It's just to get your muscles prepared and warmed up to play a show. So you shouldn't do anything you're not comfortable with doing, and it doesn't really matter what you're doing as long as you're playing evenly between your left and your right hand, your left and your right foot, and just something, whatever it is. I don't keep a set thing of what I do every night. I change it all the time. It's just like whatever I feel like playing at the time, just something as long as my hands are moving, to keep my hands, warmed up and ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay, why don't we get into some practice techniques? Maybe you can show us some demonstrations, what you do.
All right, when I practiced starting out learning to play, I was very thorough with all the exercises I did, and I had a problem with some of the people that taught me, and some of the, like say a video I would see, where a person would teach a specific pattern or exercise, and then you're stuck with that, and you don't really know where to apply it, and if you want something a little bit of a variation on that, you're stuck without having the knowledge to do that. So the way I like to teach when I teach is, say for instance, a couple of things I started with are accent patterns and different sticking patterns. I'll start here with accent patterns. To be very thorough with that, I'll start out with just the basic set of 16th notes. I'll play the quarter note 4 beat on the hi-hat, and I'll play the 16th notes on my snare without any accents first, to show how it sounds without accents. There was no accents there. If you were to add an accent in the first beat of every 4 notes, every 4 16th notes on the snare drum, it would come out sounding like this. And in teaching accent patterns, there's a lot of different ways people count that. The way I do it is normally I count 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and the second accent pattern that I would get with talking about single accents in a set of 4 16th notes, the second accent would fall on the E. So you have 1 E and 2 E and. It's like this. I could go on. There's, of course, there's having the accent on the and then on the So you go through every possible accent pattern you could possibly do with one accented note in a series of 4 16th notes, and that way you learn every accent pattern instead of one specific one. And when it comes to say a musician or writer throwing a part of a song at you that you need to accent a certain note, you'd have that knowledge of those accents to throw it in there instead of knowing just one pattern. And then you'd move on to say 2 accent patterns, 2 accents in a series of 16th notes. So you'd have, say, in a series of 16ths, the first 2 notes would be accented. And of course, that would be kind of the 1 E.
So you're hitting the 1 and the E, 1 E.
Yeah, and you go on and just go through every possible combination you can think of. You have the 1 E, and then you have the E and then the and then you have the leading back into the 1 again. And I'll just go through a series of those really quick with the 2 accent patterns to let you know how they sound, and you can just go on your own, and so I don't have to waste a lot of the time here teaching you every specific one. But if you're real thorough like that with all your exercises, you build a lot better knowledge, of different rhythms. That way, you're not limited to, what you're doing. So everything you do, you always have, the most knowledge you can possibly have of all the different accent patterns. And of course, you can go into 3 accents at a time and, do all the possible combinations you can do with that. And the same thing with sticking patterns. When somebody would teach you, say, a paradiddle, you don't want to be stuck with just a paradiddle. There's a lot of different variations you can have on a paradiddle. First, I'll demonstrate the standard paradiddle so people get an idea what that is. The sticking pattern is right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. I can move my right hand onto a tom and leave the left hand on the snare so people could hear that a little bit better, the difference between the 2 notes. And the different ways you can vary it in the paradiddle are taking the double notes and placing them in different parts of the 4, the 4 notes.
Right.
So instead of having right, left, right, right, you'd have, say, a pattern like starting the pattern with the double instead of ending it. So it's right, right, left, left, right, left. And that sounds like this. I'll demonstrate that on the different drums so you can hear the difference in the sound.
A lot of this is really stick control, I think, a lot of the combinations of the paradiddle.
Yeah, I learned a lot of this from George Lawrence Stone's book, Stick Control. And he basically what he does is you don't really have to even have the book. You can just sit down in your head and figure it out, writing out on paper, sets of 4 16th notes, and just going through, writing down right, left, the first time, and then the next line, start with the left hand, left, right, and then changing the sticking patterns. Just go through every possible combination you can write down and just learn to play them all. The way I practice those is I start out as slowly as I possibly can, and just play it for a really long time. And it's going to be kind of boring at first, but you get to where you're playing it almost on automatic pilot, so where you don't even have to think about what you're doing. And then eventually you build up your speed almost to the point where you're just about to mess up your breaking point. Take it down a little bit and stay at that tempo and just stay there for a long time until you master that speed. And then you're able to take it up, more from that. And just keep on building up your level of speed that way. And that's how I learned a lot of my different sticking exercises, accent exercises, different patterns between the drums. Is just start really slowly and just keep building up another level and just stay there and just practice it forever until you got ingrained in your mind so much you don't have to think about it.
All right, great. Okay, as far as you were showing me some 16ths that you were adding some double strokes to, maybe you could show that to us as far as practicing also.
Yeah, when I was in the drum corps in high school and in college, one of the things I did is when I did different accent patterns like I was showing you earlier, say for example with a double accent in a series of 4 notes, the unaccented notes, you can double them, and when you see it on paper, it's usually just a little slash through the note, and that means to double that particular note. And it makes a really good rolling effect with good accents. It makes for good snare drum solo material, and it sounds like if I had, for example, an accent pattern of this. I have the 1 and the I believe it is accent, so it's 1E and 1E and 2E, and so the E and would be doubled, and that would sound like this. And also what you can do with that is put the accented notes, which aren't doubled, on the toms and leave the double notes on the snare drum. So that sounds like this. And up to speed, that would be. And remember, whenever you're practicing these exercises, always start out very slow and gradually bring your speed up right underneath the breaking point where you're about lose control of it, and just keep it there for a long time until you really get it ingrained in your mind. And then you can, after you get that down, you can bring it up a little bit more and keep that process going until you're satisfied with the speed you're at. And also that practice technique also applies to learning any combination of beats between your snare drum, your kick drum, your hi-hat, whatever. Just start out very slowly and build it up. Practice for a long time on one pattern, very repetitive, very boring, very repetitive, but eventually you'll have it down to where you don't have to think about those things anymore, and you have everything, automatic pilot in your mind. And always, I don't want to limit you to like the pattern I just showed you on the toms and the snare. Keep in mind that you can write it out on paper, just go through all the different combinations you can possibly do. And I don't want to spend a lot of time doing that here in the tape and burn up the time, but you can learn, a lot of different ways to do that, and it's easy to teach yourself that way.
Great, that's some valuable information. All right, why don't we move into the basic grooves and so forth and timekeeping?
All right. As far as learning to play rock, which I think if you're watching this video is probably what you're interested in doing, there's the main time signature that's used in rock is 4/4 time. And if you're not familiar with that, if you've ever heard a band member count off a song, it's he's always saying 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your basic count. And the snare drum usually falls on the 2 and the 4. The bass drum usually falls on the 1 and the 3. And of course, they get varied around at different points in different songs. But that's the main pattern you start with in learning to play rock. So the feel of different songs, and especially different tempos, is made by the hi-hat. And the different things you can use in the hi-hat are quarter notes for one. Use a quarter note feel probably with a slower tempoed song. For example, we use a quarter note feel in Fly the Angels. And for a more up-tempo song, we would use, say, eighth notes. And depending on the feel of the song, if you want a real flowing and a real, say, a groove to a song, you'd use eighth notes accenting the quarter note. So you'd have where the quarter notes would fall. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's straight quarter notes. And then you'd play, if you were to count eighth notes on that and accent the quarter note, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the way a lot of people count eighth notes is usually 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you're accenting all of the 1, 2, 3, 4, all the numbers, and you're just playing in between on the ands. And that makes for a good, rolling groove. If you want a real staccato groove, say if the bass player was playing a staccato figure on the bass, and say for example our song Up All Night, Dana plays a very staccato figure, and there's also I think some keyboard bass going on there, and it's a very straight groove. So you'd accent every note on that one, and it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, why don't we see that with the band right now?
Okay.
Let's have a demonstration with the
First,
group.
we'll start out with the quarter note groove, and this, of course, being a slower tempo song, Fly the Angels, has the quarter note feel to it. And first, I'll demonstrate by myself, and then we'll cut to a clip of me playing with the band.
That's great.
Of course, keep in mind, I'm varying off of the basic kick drum on the 1 and the 3 and the snare drum on the 2 and the 4. I vary a little bit. Of course, all songs are going to do that, but they basically keep that same structure. So here's me playing with Mark and Dana on that. That was an example of how a quarter note feel with a slower tempo song like Fly the Angels helps to pull that back and give it a real laid back feeling. If you were to put in eighth notes in that song, it would really sound like it was being rushed. So you have to change the feel of songs by changing the amount of notes you're playing. And a song that you want to sound like it's moving a bit, for example, Mad About You, you'd want to put an eighth note pattern in there, although you still want to keep the basic 1, 2, 3, 4 beat by accenting those notes. So I'll play it first by myself, and then we'll cut again to the rest of the Slaughter guys playing along with me on Mad About You. All right, and here we are playing semi the same basic pattern, and this is along with the band, so you can see how that kind of helps the flow of the song. And this is Slaughter. All right, that was a good example of how an eighth note pattern with accents in the downbeat can help, move a song along. And if you want a song to actually not be really rushing and feel like it's moving that much, to really have a really strong dance type feel, our song Up All Night, Dana played a really staccato bass pattern along with some keyboard bass, and it has a really almost a dance feel to it. And we achieved that. I wanted to complement his bass part by playing a more straight pattern on the hi-hat. So I'm playing eighth notes, but with all the notes accented. And of course, I add a couple of 16th notes in with the pattern to spice it up a little bit, but just overlook that for now. We'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about the hi-hat. But the basic groove is like this. See, that was a very straight eighth note pattern on the hi-hat without any accents to complement Dana's staccato bass part. And it does almost give it a dance feel. It sounds almost like a Janet Jackson song at that point. And to show you how it actually fits in the song and complements his part, we're going to again cut to Slaughter playing Up All Night.
I really appreciate a lot of the hi-hat work that you utilize in a lot of your drumming. Maybe you could expand on that, some of the things and how you came upon these ideas.
Well, some of the different patterns I use in the hi-hat came from the studying I did with rudiments and with certain types of rolls, 5-stroke rolls, that kind of thing. And a lot of people will tell you if you're playing rock music, you don't really need to learn any of that because you don't use it. But If you want to separate yourself from the average drummer, and instead of playing just the average groove, you can spice something up a little bit by putting some different patterns in the hi-hat, and just and create your own style and have a more distinctive style, that people would remember you for. And one of the things that I changed a bit was the pattern for Up All Night, especially live. I expand on that a bit more, and I'll show you how it would be played straight, and then I'll expand on it and start playing a little bit more with the hi-hat, and show you just how you can change the beat around. I was overplaying it a bit there, but if you just throw something in once in a while, it just gives you an extra little flair, extra little bit of style to your playing to create your own style.
On Mad About You, you do some similar hat work also. You've got a great intro to that tune.
Yeah, the stuff I did on the intro of Mad About You is actually in a different time. It's got a 6/8 feel to it, which is kind of a triplet thing, and it's different from the 4/4 I was originally talking about. And I'll give you a little demonstration of what I was doing in the beginning of Mad About You, and then I'll go into explaining exactly what I did. So what I was doing there is I'm playing in a 6/8 feel, triplet 16ths between my ride cymbal and my hi-hat, playing the right hand all the notes on the ride cymbal, the left hand on the hi-hat, and every once in a while I'll throw in, say, a 5-stroke roll, which, going back to accent patterns, I would play the unaccented notes, I would just double them up, and let me demonstrate a 5-stroke roll so you wouldn't get confused on that. And when I apply that to the hi-hat and the ride in triplet pattern, it sounds like this. All right, to explain exactly what I'm doing, first of all, I'm playing what's normally called a double paradiddle with a 6/8 feel, and that's really a paradiddle with just 2 more single notes attached to the front of it, so the pattern is right, left, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, right, left, left. And at the end of each of those phrases, I throw in a 5-stroke roll.
On the 5-stroke, yeah.
And I'll play it again, the hi-hat just by itself, so you can get an understanding of what that is. And with the roll, after every one of those patterns, right, left, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, right, left, left, I put a roll, 5-stroke roll at the end, so it's like this. All right, and what I'm doing on the snare drum is I'm playing, of every 4 counts, I'm hitting the snare drum on the 3rd count, and the bass drum is just playing basically a 4 on the floor every count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4 on the bass drum, and the snare drum's just catching the 3rd beat. And so when I put it all together, it works with the song. It's very much a drum emphasis on that part of the song, and so I can actually cut to a section of Playing with Slaughter again to demonstrate how that actually fits into the music.
That was excellent. Well, to conclude on the hi-hat, I noticed one thing that you do is you have a rocking motion that you utilize. Maybe you could demonstrate that for us.
Yeah, with my hi-hat, I use a technique, I would call it, I guess, a heel splash technique, which actually makes the sound of hitting the hi-hat with, while your foot is up, opening it and closing it, like this. I kind of try to make that sound using my foot. First, I splash, I kick it with my heel to make the splash sound, and then I come back down with the ball of my foot to close it, and that ends up sounding like this. And that comes in handy when I'm, say, riding on the ride cymbal, and I still want to have that splashy hi-hat sound, but I don't have a hand to get over there. Or if I'm riding, say, on a floor tom, and I still want to have the feel of a hi-hat groove going. And I'll demonstrate that right now with first with a ride cymbal pattern. All right, now I'm going to demonstrate how that splash hi-hat technique will help to liven up your average floor tom ride beat, which normally sounds pretty, pretty dull without any kind of cymbal work in there.
That's great hi-hat technique. Excellent. Okay, since we're on the topic of feet, why don't we talk about your bass drum technique?
All right, on my bass drums, like I said earlier, I set myself on my stool a bit closer to the front of the stool, and I'm very balanced, so if I lift my feet up, I still regain the same amount of balance. So when I'm playing, I'm able to keep my heel up, and if you're playing with your heel up, you're able to use your leg a bit more and get a lot more power out of your bass drum, and also enables me to use a technique for getting fast double hits off my bass drum. A lot of people use a different technique. Some people use what they call a heel toe on the bass drum. Myself, I kind of kick it with the ball of my foot at first, and for the first note. And for the second note, I just like slam the rest of my foot down on it. So it's one motion, kind of sliding into the pedal, and I'll demonstrate that right now. And that's really helpful in doing patterns between, say, if you're a single kick player, simulating double bass drum techniques between your toms and your bass drum. For example, if you were to play a series of 30-second notes between your toms and your bass drum, you could actually bring it up almost to the speed of that with a double bass.
Your left hand is very developed, and I also noticed that your left foot is developed also. And that gives you the ability to be very ambidextrous.
Yeah, it's one thing I concentrate a lot on is being able to play everything that I can play with my right side, whether it be my hand or my foot, equally with the left side. So whenever I learn one pattern, even say on between the hi-hat, snare drum, and the bass drum, just a simple groove, I always cross over and make sure I can play it the same way with the left hand playing the hi-hat and the right hand on the snare drum. And if I'm playing, say, a double bass pattern, I always want to make sure I lead with my left hand, with my left foot as well. Same goes with all the patterns I do in the snare drum or the drums. I want to make sure I can lead with both hands equally. And what I found that helped me out the most with is I was able to incorporate that into my live performance by freeing up my other hand to do, say, a stick twirl or throw the stick up, whatever, just for a little bit of more flash to the show, just to bring what I do out to the audience a little bit better. And I'll demonstrate that. First of all, I'll show you how a basic groove is played with the right hand, and then I'll switch over to the left hand. A couple other things that helps me with is also being able to bring my right hand up if I want more power in the snare drum, or if I want to, to have a better visual effect to hitting the snare drum, say on a song with a very powerful backbeat. I can bring my hand up without having to cross over, underneath my hi-hat arm. And another thing I do is if I'm playing on the right hand and I want to do a stick twirl, what I do is I'll alternate every, say, 4 beats and switch over a little bit quicker, and that frees my right hand up. I'll demonstrate that. Therefore, the space I leave for my right hand, I can do a stick twirl, and I'll show you that right now. And also, if you free your left hand up when you're playing the ride cymbal, you can also cross your left hand over to the ride cymbal and do some things while you're playing the ride. I'll demonstrate that right now. Just gives you a chance to add a little bit extra into your playing, a little bit more of a visual aspect to it.
Well, maybe now we can look at you showing all these tricks and so forth in one example.
All right, I'll just lay down a groove and throw in a few things that I do, and then afterwards I'll go back and explain exactly what it was I was doing. All right, the first thing I did there, I believe, was the right-handed stick spin. And the way I do it with my right hand is it's not a real spin. It's between my first and second fingers, and this is the most common spin. It's just kind of a rotating motion between the fingers like this. I'm not really exactly sure how to explain it. It's just going back and forth. And when you get it up to speed, it looks like a real spin. The second one I did is actually a real spin, and it's really kind of taken from what a baton twirler would do. I'm starting between my first and second finger and then working my way between every other finger, just twirling it around one at a time. And then when I get to my bottom, between my bottom 2 fingers, I start coming back up and just going between every finger again and up to speed. It starts to look like a real spin.
That's great.
And you can change the direction of that one either way.
So you go back and forth.
Yeah, and I just put that into where I'm playing my right-handed hi-hat pattern. And one of the other things I do is I throw my stick on an offbeat up and catch. I throw it up straight and catch the top part, so I'm going to end up holding the top part of the stick.
Oh.
And I catch it and bring it around the back of my head and normally come land on a China type cymbal or a crash. So it's like one motion kind of thing. And the other thing is when I'm hitting one of my high cymbals or a crash cymbal, I wind those up, coming around my head and landing on the crash. And because my cymbals are so high, it kind of gives me a little bit more momentum, to get a really powerful hit out of those. And also it looks cool from way up in the balcony. So.
Yeah, and then you put the triple beat on the kick drum a lot of times when you do that, I notice. Yeah,
just to accent, it's just on really accented notes a lot of times I'll do that, and the triplet on the bass drum is, I'll demonstrate that right now. It's, I guess you would call it a rough. A lot of people play theirs with 2 rights on the 2 hits on the right bass drum and 1 on the left. I like to play mine evenly, right, left, right, and then a snare with the crash or whatever.
Oh, I see.
And I'll demonstrate that starting slow and I'll build it up.
Okay.
That's just another way to accent and a really emphasized note. I'll use that pattern along with maybe the around the head stick thing, and it just emphasizes visually and audio-wise a really accented note.
The interpretation of music is very important, and of course you can play many different grooves to a given bass line, for instance. And I know recently you have just developed a song, Shout It Out, and I know you had some different aspects that you could have played, and you chose this jungle thing that you demonstrated prior to this for me.
Yeah, when we started the intro to the song Shout It Out, the main figure was the bass is playing like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 is like doon, 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 doon. I'm not really in tune, but that was the basic figure he's playing. And on the drums, I could have done, just say a straight snare drum, and bass drum rhythm with a ride cymbal, like say this. But we wanted to take a little bit of a different approach to the song. So the way we started out is we started with that basic rhythm, the dun, 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 on the toms and the kick drum, and to fill up the notes, we wanted to give it a little bit of like a jungle feel. So between those notes, I just started playing with toms in between the main notes, and Dana's bass line then developed around that. And I'll give a demonstration of that part right now, and then I'll cut to the guys and I playing that the intro to Shout Out. And we'll see that in just a second.
Right.
And now we'll cut to the Slaughter playing the song so you can see how that fits along with Dana's bass line and with the guitar player, which is also doing something completely different from that. So here's Slaughter again. And again, in coming up with that part, the main reason for that is to come up with something a little bit different than the average. And you're always looking to make your music a little bit different and a little bit more special than the next guys so people will remember you. And we're always looking to come up with different things. There's a song we just recorded for our new record that has a straight groove that normally would be played with just a straight 8th note hi-hat feel and a 2 and 4 bass drum. But I decided to put in a 16th note pattern in the hi-hat that normally, would sound a bit, like disco-y or dancey, with that pattern. But we have really heavy metal guitar in there, so it makes it actually work, and it's really different with that style of music. And I'll show you the way it would be straight, and then I'll also add in the hi-hat as I'm going along. Another example of how I changed the rhythm that would normally be played as a straight 2/4 pattern is the song Eye to Eye off Stick It To You. And what I did for that one is I kept the usual hi-hat pattern with 8 notes on the hi-hat with my left hand, and I alternate between the hi-hat and the snare drum, so I'm able to play the actual hi-hat part and the snare drum part with just my left hand, freeing my right hand to play another instrument, which I chose to use the cowbell. And I'll show you the rhythm I got first with just the hi-hat and the snare. And again, being ambidextrous helps to, free your left hand up to be able to do that. And the cowbell pattern I added in is And when you put that all together, it makes for a really unique pattern that would not normally be found in you know, a rock song, per se. All right, now we'll take a look at me playing that same rhythm with Dan and Mark in the song Eye to Eye to show you how it spices up the song and gives it a little bit of a different drum feel to it. So I'm kind of making my own style here. This is Slaughter again. Okay, with a pattern like that, normally from a drummer standpoint, it might seem like you're overplaying or it doesn't fit the song, but you need to really try different things. And I was lucky enough to be playing with Dana, who's also not only the bass player, but he's also the producer of the band. And he gives me a lot of insight as to watching out for the song parts and playing for the actual like bass line, guitar line, vocal line, whatever, just emphasizing what they're doing instead of just playing what you've always been taught as a drummer to do, to take a little bit more of a chance. And you know, at first when he throws some ideas at me, I think, well, that sounds really stupid, I don't want to play it. But then I'd hear it with the track and it sounds really good. So I was able to open up my mind a lot more and understand that things that may not sound good, you know, from a drummer standpoint, work with the song. And that's the main thing I've learned about working with producers and writers, you know, in the band.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely a great attitude to have. All right, why don't we move into drum fills? You've come up with some excellent fills, and I know one of the songs where I've heard that is Loaded Gun.
Yeah, the fills that I use in a lot of endings of songs, and in that song in particular, are based on interaction between the upper instruments, which are the snare and the toms, and the bass drums. And again, the way I get the rhythm combinations between the two, I take it from different sticking patterns, and I'll just use, say, the right-handed part for the upper instruments and the left-hand part for the bass drums. So for example, if I wanted to do a paradiddle between the two instruments, it would sound like this. And to make those sound really full, to get that effect that I've got at the end of Loaded Gun, I'll double every note. So every time I hit my right hand, I'll hit my left hand immediately afterwards, and every time I hit my right foot, I'll hit my left foot immediately afterwards. So you get the same basic pattern, but there's twice as many notes, and I'll play that right now. All right, now I'll show you how that works with the song. And this is from the live version of Loaded Gun. I'm playing with Dan and Mark again. Here it is.
conclusion, Blas, is there any words of wisdom you can share with the up-and-coming drummers?
Yeah, I'd say that the most important thing is keeping an open mind and an open ear to all different types of musical styles. And an important way to practice is listening to other drummers, playing other drummer songs, other songs from other bands, so you can get into that drummer's head and see where they were at when they were coming up with a part for a particular song. And the more information you take in from as many different sources you can, the bigger the library you're going to have to choose from to make your own style. Just as if you're watching this video or anybody else's video, you don't really take what I'd say as the Bible. You would just make your own interpretation of the information I give you and take other information from other sources and put it together to make your own style. And also I wanted to mention that if you're an up-and-coming drummer, don't be discouraged if you don't have the money to buy a really expensive kit, because a lot of people, including myself, who are successful didn't have very expensive kits when they were starting out. And even up until the time I got into Slaughter, I was still playing on a very inexpensive, very put together drum set that was made out of some old drums that my high school had thrown away, that I just put on some stands and basically rigged up to look like it looked all right. I covered it in wallpaper and some things. But don't be discouraged by that, because out of all the drummers in my school who had the really expensive chrome snare drums and expensive sets, I was the one, from my school that went ahead to be successful, and I didn't have any of that. So don't be discouraged by that.